So we're on Scottsdale Reserve, which is a bush heritage property about an hour south of Canberra. And we're here today because we've been collecting a threatened striped legless lizard, which we're releasing onto the reserve. Over the last few years, we've discovered we have a very high reptile population here, both in numbers and diversity of species. But there was one species that was notably missing, and it was a grassland species, which is the striped legless lizard, which is the project we then started to develop. So we have that high number of reptiles, largely for two reasons, and that's the high ground cover that we have here, so that gives a good habitat for the reptiles and also protection from predation from birds, foxes and cats and other things that would eat them. But it also provides a good habitat for the insect life to develop, which is their primary food source. So they have both a good habitat, protection from predation, and a good food source to survive off.
Well, striped legless lizard is one of my favourite lizards. It's a vulnerable species, which means it's facing extinction in the near future. It's quite a unique little animal. Not only does it have no legs, it also squeaks as a kind of communication strategy, and when it's a bit worried, a bit scared, it also squeaks. They can leap 30 centimetres into the air, which seems to be a predation kind of strategy. So if a snake's coming along, they can leap into the air to get out of the way of the snake. Yeah, and obviously quite colourful, the stripes. They can have a yellow neck. Quite an attractive little animal, but very vulnerable to ploughing and overgrazing. These are the threats that historically have wiped out about 99% of the habitat for this species. Increasingly now, urbanisation is the biggest threat facing it. So when we put up new suburbs, there's no room for this little grassland dependent species. So once populations have been lost from areas, they're not going to be able to reinvade. So translocating, taking animals from one habitat and putting it back in the areas where they used to be, is an important conservation strategy.
So rescuing these lizards is important to me because they are threatened. They are on their way out. They are suffering as a result of human habitation of this continent. And that's what this program is about. It's about protecting the last populations of this species and finding them a new home to hopefully breed and expand and recover.
We'll know this project's been successful when maybe finding individuals that have been born out here and the adults that were released are still alive. The amount of food that's available at Scottsdale for the species compared to where they came from. He's also going to be recording data on temperature, the kind of grass species that the lizards go under. So we're trying to capture as much information as we can about the kind of habitat these species prefer, so in the future we can modify and manage the habitat for their security. And that will tell us that we have a self-sustaining population on Scottsdale, and that is the aim.
It is under threat, and unmanaged it would go out. And to that extent, it symbolises and represents all these other species that we have and that Bush Heritage tries to protect and do something for. So the only thing I can say to our supporters is a big thank you. The money that we receive and the time we receive from our volunteers is absolutely critical, and the success of this project is entirely dependent on that. So a huge thank you.